I've got 5 menopause fitness questions all queued up today in this roundup from our Flipping 50 Insiders group that's on Facebook, from our Instagram timeline, and from iTunes comments. I'm gathering and answering these 5 questions. I bet one or more of them is a lingering question for you too, or you will love listening to confirm that what you thought all along was spot on. And I'll link to each of these two if you're not following the Insiders group, Instagram or iTunes, and you want to hang out to see and hear a positive message on your social media for a change. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles, your concerns, and your hopes and inspirations. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset about both of those things so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in the second and better half. Before I dive in here, I'm going to do a couple of things, and I want to do a shout out to 2 women who I'm guessing women. So I guess I shouldn't do that. It's only writing, right? But these are new reviews from the podcast. And I want to read them and let you know how very much it matters to me. Both of these were from early February in 21. One is from Candace. The other one is from Gem76. So shout out to you and thank you for taking the time. It really matters. The first is I'm 61 years in life. By the way, this podcast is uplifting, informative, and motivational. I continue to learn and intentionally live life. Thank you for this tool. And the second is I am 66 and I've been following Deborah Atkinson for 3 years. I have never been stronger, healthier, or more motivated. She brings the science together with the how to for results. This could be what you've been waiting for. Oh my goodness, I'm probably going to have to hire one of you for help with my marketing copy. I couldn't have written it better had I wanted to. And there is nothing better than getting up to that kind of praise. As many of you know, and maybe you don't, doing a podcast is a labor of love. So while I talk occasionally about upcoming programs, special offers, and I've got one for you today, by the way, it's really a, gift of time and scrounging for the Q&As and for the topics that will be most helpful, most valuable to you, using the science to share them. So it's not just hearsay and opinion, but literally it's what's true. And then it's all filtered for you. It's a time consuming thing. And we are a very, very small team. And as many of you know, in 2020, you know, the pandemic changed everything for small businesses and large businesses. And I'm grateful that I was already an online fitness business, the first and the only fitness membership site for women in menopause, dedicated to using science, featuring only you because you're not a man or a mouse or even a young woman. So let me dive into this. I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate those comments because that makes it easier to dedicate those couple of hours, several times a week, looking for content, writing the show notes, and literally doing this and then doing all the tech behind the scenes so it finally gets to you. So that brings me to the sponsor of this episode. And I'm going to link to a very special opportunity this month. I rarely do this. If you've got 20 or more pounds to lose, and you know already that after 50, it's different, not impossible, to lose it. It's also different losing, 15 or 20 or more pounds versus a few, or should be, if your strategy hasn't changed. And if you've accumulated this mass of diet experience over the years, it can be really hard to know what is the right thing to do at this point in your life. My Fit You program, it's 50% off enrollment right now. It is actually dedicated for women who have at least 15 to 20 pounds to lose. It doesn't make it totally inappropriate for someone who doesn't have that much, but it's really about the science of how do we truly lose it when you've got a higher fat percentage or you're approaching the obesity qualification, that designation when you're over 30% body fat and you're in postmenopause and hormones have changed. But there's also not just the 50% enrollment right now, but there's a special bonus for the first 10 students who get started. So don't sit on this. Get to the show notes and look at it. But my metabolism mastery course, we offered it last April. Yeah, and y'all remember where we were? Just about in panic mode because the gym was suddenly taken away. Lockdowns, we're at home. We're eating lots of comfort food, probably drinking a little bit more wine if you had that in tendency to do so anyway. That metabolism mastery course is a 6-session course. I delivered it kind of in a drip over 3 weeks, twice a week, and it's a $6.99 value. We sold out. And now I'm offering it to you as a bonus for getting into Fit You while it's 50% off enrollment. Plus, you get a special fasting component layered into the programming. And I will be on a video uh, or audio, however you choose to listen to it, with the cheat sheet to walk you through how do you choose where to start and indeed make sure it is appropriate. So I'll link to all of that, the Fit You program in the show notes. And let's dive in. All right. So the very first question is soy or almond milk healthier for menopausal women? All right. So here's my answer to this question. I first wrote about this, specifically about soy, in You Still Got It, Girl, and that book came out in 2015. Soy is three things: an estrogenic, an obesogenic, and a goitrogenic. Let's go into what that is. Estrogenic, like it sounds, it mimics estrogen. It's a phytoestrogen and it confuses your body. So when you eat soy, specifically some women more than others, you are eating more estrogen. And I know when you go through menopause, you think, well, my estrogen's coming down. Don't I want to do that in order to bring it back up and balance it? Well, no, not necessarily, because it's not the right thing for you. If you have a higher risk of breast cancer, for instance, and it really just throws your body off not knowing because you're probably not going to eat soy in a certain stable amount every single day. And so the confusion, when your body's confused, it won't do anything. It halts fat burning for sure. And your metabolism, therefore, is also slowed and halts. Next up is what's an obesogenic? Well, just like it sounds, it contributes to obesity. It increases fat stores. So if you think about what does high estrogen do for you normally, when you're in that stage of your life, you're in reproduction mode, right? So you're storing fat between your knees and your belly button because that's where we need to grow babies, even if you're not trying to. And so an obesogenic, not necessarily something we're striving for right now. And last but not least, a goitrogenic disrupts your thyroid function or has the potential to. So soy is generally classified as those three. When I wrote about it in 2015, there is slightly more information now than there used to be about estrogen. And there is, the reason for the question is soy, if you remove dairy milk because you're at risk for food sensitivity or lactose intolerance, or simply the reasons that I removed it from my diet back in, I was just 31, I think, training for my first marathon. I had a baby in a baby jogger, and I wanted to remove dairy because of the phlegm and the mucus. And and I don't mean it was a gross, and I know just even mentioning those words is like, ugh, but you don't want to be kind of coughing and sneezing and, runny nose, that kind of thing while you're running. And I was also a speaker and speaking in front of classrooms. I was speaking for audiences and groups and as a, professional speaker on the topic of health and fitness. That's also not conducive. So, you don't have dairy before it's like a piece of prep, you clear your throat. And so I was doing it for reasons unrelated to what I now know. And it was because it's a high source of protein. So if you're taking in tofu, you're taking in soy milk, it's a way to kind of swap out. Now I've got protein where, I took out the dairy. That was a source of protein and kind of benefiting that way. But, all of that said, there are updates on nutrition all the time and research on what's the real status now. And some women will tolerate soy better if it's fermented soy, like tempeh or miso. And those might be first things that you introduce, but I would recommend doing an elimination diet for yourself. I've worked with a general in the Army stationed in Okinawa. Now, you would think, or at least I did, and so did she, that if you were going to eat soy anywhere in the world, that would be a non-GMO, cleanest source of soy possible, and it'd be okay. However, she found hot flashes and night sweats were absolutely intolerable. She was suffering from insomnia. It was challenging for her to, number one, function, let alone start the exercise program we actually wanted to do with her because of lack of sleep due to night sweats. And she was suffering from them in the day too, but the night was the worst. We removed soy as an experiment and we removed it, maybe on a Sunday. By Thursday, she was already better. Less frequency, less intense. So, I mean, I tell you that story, that's one woman, but that's quite a story to relate to you. So I would look at, what's your risk of breast cancer? There may not be as strong a link as we once thought, but I would also test it for your other symptoms. If you're at your ideal weight, you're at your ideal body fat, you're, not suffering from hot flashes and night sweats, and you're using soy, you may want to look at it. It may be okay. There are some doctors, and one respected very much by me, Dr. Ellen Christensen, who's looked at pros and cons both ways. There are a lot of benefits, and one of them actually is protection against breast cancer from soy, depending on who you are. So it's something to have a chat about if you want to consider it. But I'll tell you personally what I'm doing. So I've given you the professional. I still avoid it. I don't use soy milk. Even though you know how proactive I am about protein intake, I don't use soy products. I don't cook with them. I don't put tofu in my smoothies. I was doing that for a period of time too, but I just no longer do it. And I feel better for having done it. I will also tell you that I had women probably back in the late 90s, early 2000s that would snack incessantly on soybeans. And when soybean nuts snacks just came out early on, and she was, among my clients, one of those who had more hot flashes than anyone else. Again, a study of one does not prove anything, but I just share that with you as food for thought. And I'd love to hear from any of you who do have soy regularly, who are at optimal weight, no hot flashes. And so there you have it. All right. Next question. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting? Well, thanks so much for asking. Last week, as I'm doing this recording right now, we're talking February of 2021. 2021 feels like 2020 went on so long we might still be in it, but we're not. And I did a masterclass with the Open to the Public masterclass. If you happen to be listening right now, I rarely do this, but I've had so much demand for people who missed it that I literally am putting the replay on demand. It will disappear Sunday night, February 14th. But I'm going to put the link to the on demand replay. That means you have to get in right now if you're listening and be able to listen to it. So I'm releasing this Saturday morning. You will have very limited chances to get in. We'll do 2 a day, and that's it. So I want you to pay attention, but I'm going to do um, a little discussion here for you. And then if you really want to go do the deep dive, it's there in the masterclass. So in the masterclass, I gave a quick self quiz so that you could decide if it's right for you or right for you right now. And I shared the mounting proven research on the benefits, the long term benefits of fasting. And I share my friend and fasting expert with you in it if you want to do a deep dive on fasting specifically. I dove into the exercise and fasting connection, but my good friend, whom I mentioned in the masterclass, is really the go to for women in midlife. So, in the presentation, I share the importance of having a specific intermittent fasting plan. The timing is on purpose, not accidental. Your exercise during periodic or during an eating or fasting window during a day should be on purpose as well. So, should you resistance train while fasting? Yes, as long as your eating window fuels and then refuels that exercise with high protein meals. The answer to should you do interval training together with fasting? It depends on the type of fasting that you're doing. Periodic, say you're doing this occasionally and planned with caloric restriction. No, not so much. I wouldn't do high intensity interval training. Using time restricted feeding regularly with the right timing of exercise and food, then yes. And make sure that your energy expenditure remains as high as normal. Meaning, if you're choosing to exercise fasted and you suddenly can't go as fast or as hard, it's not your effort level, by the way. It is, can you lift the same amount of weight or can you go the same speed that you're used to going? Because everything's going to feel harder if you have too few calories or no fuel. But the way fat burning truly works is the higher intensity and the faster or harder you can go, the more ultimate fat you will burn, even though you burn a lower percentage of it as fat. You should probably push pause and replay that. Okay, so that replay again, it's on demand for a short time if you'd like to take a deep dive. And if you want support for exercise, for fasting, and boosting your metabolism, and you've got that 20 pounds to lose, Fit You is currently open at 50% off. And during the month of February, I'm offering that Metabolism Mastery in Menopause course, a $699 value as a bonus. And that's not all. A fasting component to help you add this to your exercise and the mindset and recipe and menu suggestions during the 8-week program so that you have access to that for good, but see the majority of your progress during that first 8 weeks. Okay, now I've got a couple questions from the same listener. So, in this 5 menopause fitness questions roundup, one listener got really savvy and asked me a couple of different things. The first one: when is it recommended to do endurance activities like a power yoga, a jog, or training for a 10K or a spin bike? Okay, so there are a lot of things I need to break down in here. Let me dive in. It's recommended most often not to do endurance exercise. And if you just got a bang, I just bumped into the microphone. Sorry about that. It's a new mic and I'm not used to it. So let me say that again. It is recommended most often not to do endurance exercise if you've got hormone imbalances. And that would be evidenced that you've got weight loss resistance, you've got belly fat, you got a lack of sleep, hot flashes, night sweats. Some of you know the drill. What qualifies as endurance exercise has more to do with length as suggested. Okay, right? So endurance meaning longer. So a 20-minute power yoga session, go for it. But an hour power yoga session, especially if it's hot yoga. I mean, unless for you that's a norm, you're relaxed and getting the best sleep possible at your ideal weight, AKA it's working, then go for it. But if you're not there, I wouldn't recommend, an hour or more class of power yoga. Long runs, well, by nature, that's higher intensity. So we look at intensity in two ways. One, literally, yes, are you getting breathless? But we also look at intensity as it's intense if you go longer. So if you're doing something in an endurance mode, but you're doing it for over an hour, 75 minutes is really the mark where cortisol starts to go crazy and work against you. So if you're going out there for long, long rides, potentially you're throwing yourself under the bus, girlfriend. Even doing too many, say 45-minute workouts repeatedly in what I call no benefits zone. So imagine a triangle. So comes to the point at the top like a pyramid. 1 is on the bottom, 5 is at the top. 5 and 4 even are breathless. That's your interval training work mode. 1 is your recovery mode. And it's also that all day activity. You're cleaning the house, right? You'd say, no, I'm not working out. But actually, you do clean the house for 4 or 5 hours. That is as beneficial movement as sometimes a workout and sometimes more. So if you're doing those long 45-minute workouts repeatedly, more than once a week in that no benefit zone, you're going to probably make cortisol imbalance worse. Fat burning doesn't usually occur well from those kinds of sessions. So here's the irony. A 45-minute walk may result in more fat burning than a 45-minute treadmill or outdoor run. It depends on your current status. If you're balanced, you're at ideal weight, energy, sleep, fat, then introduce it or continue doing what you're doing. If you are not liking the results you have right now and you're having hot flashes and insomnia and belly fat, then you want to not run, but run from the more is better type of workout. So go into the woods, do a 2-hour hike if you're ready for that. And if you need that endurance fix, that would be a better way to go. The longer you go, the lower that intensity better be. Imagine a teeter totter. We got long, then on the other end, we've got low. Okay. If you're training for a 10K or you want to, be thinking about and absolutely certain about why you want to. So, long endurance exercise is not the route to fat burning. But if you are just, I love that, I love it, love it, love it, I have joy from it. I'm a big believer we can't take the joy away from the girl and have her be at her optimal weight. So, your hormones are tied to joy too, by the way. So, if we've got serotonin and oxytocin because we're loving, loving, loving something, great. But if you are just doing it purely for the, here's where I was and I used to do this all the time, you're not that person anymore. You don't have that status. You don't have that hormone profile. So, start where you're at. Don't look back at that roadkill. Let's look out the front window. Where are we going? I use a strategy for myself and clients of less volume and more strategically planned workouts when I'm training for something. And I remember, or I want you to remember, I spent 6 years in Boulder, Colorado. And who lives in Boulder, Colorado? World athletes who want to train at altitude, triathletes and other endurance or multi sport athletes. But everyone tries to train as if they are a world champion. That overtraining in females leads to the high frequency of adrenal fatigue and injury that you often see in midlife women anywhere. So I suggest that you work with a coach who will help you do what I just suggested and plan your work and your recovery not in a traditional training way. That means you're not going to go on and say, Hal Higdon, what's your running strategy, right? Those generic programs are really not built for you. So they're emerging. I can help you with one. I've posted how I work with clients to do this and what I've done for myself to reduce the amount of training I did for Ironman distance triathlons and reducing that amount by about a third. Spin bike workouts with a warm up and a cool down. A good session is about quality, not quantity. A 45 to 60-minute session should be no longer than about 25 minutes of really high intensity intervals, or it should be a zone 1 to 2 level recovery ride all the way through. That's just like your walk. And when you know the effect your exercise has on your hormones, you know better than how to manipulate your weight and your energy and your sleep. All right. So, same listener added this comment. Please clarify this point. As a nutrition major many years ago, the strategy was to eat carbohydrates after a muscle pump and also protein, but right after, not to wait. So she wanted some clarification because I recommend waiting. 60 to 90 minutes is really ideal to have a high protein meal after resistance training. So, a couple of clues right in that question. So, as a nutrition major many years ago, what did we go by? Well, we still went by RDAs and we went by the best sports science we had then. But here's something that references this very thing still. Most women listening, I would say this is true. You're not an athlete, are you? If you are, you're training for a marathon or a triathlon or a 10K because you really want to do this, but that's a reach for you. You're biking miles and miles daily, then yes, fuel immediately. But if you are not, if the reason you're exercising is for health and longevity and potentially weight loss, then you're only exercising minimally for energy, for fat burning, and support balancing your hormones, you absolutely want to wait because we will have more muscle protein synthesis at about 90 minutes after a strength training work. So it's super important that you're considering, who are you? What are your goals? Are you an athlete? You're going to go really hard again tomorrow? Well, then you're probably not here listening to the After 50 fitness formula for women. And I do work with elite athletes who want to do triathlons and marathons, but really that's not who I'm talking to on the Flipping 50 podcast. We're talking to the majority of our women who want to be kick ass healthy right now, be comfortable in their own bodies and skins right now, get into those back of the closet clothes that we love. And do that right now with foresight into, what am I setting myself up for in 5 and 10 and 20 years so that I'm also healthy then? I'm 57, my mom's 94. I can't think just about what's in front of my nose and feeling good in clothes on Saturday night and how I can get there and look the best. I got to be thinking about the next 40 years, girls. I don't know about you, but this is a 2-for-1, and you want to be thinking about both. So, in terms of building muscle protein synthesis, you want to combine that protein intake and the resistance training and time them together perfectly as many times a week as you can. Now, you and I sometimes have to do that strength training workout, and then we have to run and catch a plane, or, yeah, well, we will again. What am I saying? But you get it. We're busy. We got to jump onto a Zoom. We can't be sipping our smoothies or spooning with a smoothie bowl or having that meal right then. We're going to probably have to break that rule and not always be able to get it. And that is okay. 80-20 rule. Most of the time, can you do it correctly? You will have bigger and better benefits. And how many carbs? Well, some, but few. So it depends on what time of day we're talking about eating. And I've talked about this a little bit more in the fasting replay that I'll share for those of you that are interested. So you can run to my Instagram account. You'll see that I posted it. It's only good until Sunday evening. So it's only going to be up for that period of time. But if you are really curious, it's clear that for women in midlife and potentially beyond, breaking your fast in the morning is important, but we need high protein meals. We do not need carbohydrates in the morning. We've got energy from cortisol. So the rules all change, and you've really got to, kind of stay up to date on the science. And I'm hoping that helps any of you who are listening. So you want to wait if you can and when you can, as often as you can, for that put back for the muscle repair, because we're trying to avoid muscle breakdown. You don't need probably that glucose replenishment as quickly because you're not going to do another hard workout for at least 72 hours. You need recovery as much as you need work, unless you're going at it day after day after day, breaking down your muscles constantly, like someone who is training for a marathon or triathlon. Okay. Something that gets tricky for one of our listeners, who is also a fitness coach and soon to be nutrition coach, is when a carb is also a protein, like nuts or hemp seeds, or when a fat is also a protein. How do I balance meals? Okay, so first, I want to talk about balanced meals. And this is actually really a tandem to what I've recently asked. Let's talk about what balanced meals is. So I may be talking right now to any of the 80,000 people that could be downloading this podcast in any podcast episode. We're all different. That looks different for everyone. You want to know that you or your clients, in your case, do best with what kind of balance, right? So it could be high protein or high fat or high carb. Now, during middle life, probably high carb is really very rare. But a balanced meal for someone could be 33% ish of protein and fat and carbs, really balanced. For another, balanced might be higher fat, moderate protein, and low carb, or at least for a time. For instance, doing a keto diet for a reset. For others, still, a balanced diet is high protein, low in fat, and moderate in carbohydrates. Then there really isn't a lot of confusion. So, yes, foods double dip all the time. They all have. Salmon, for instance, it's a protein and it's a healthy serving of fat. So, in that meal, for instance, you wouldn't need to be consciously adding an oil, for instance. And if you were keeping your fat moderate, because you're, say, predisposed to doing so, and I mean genetically. And optimally, you're doing high protein and moderate fats or low carbs, then that would be even truer. When you take that salmon in, it's already a high hit of fat. So you've got it. But let's talk fats and protein. So hemp seeds are a great source of healthy fat and added plant-based complete protein. I love to add them to smoothies. They couldn't solo as the only source of protein at your meal, but they're a great addition. So 3 tablespoons is a serving, 10 grams of protein. That's a powerful punch from a plant-based protein that is lower in carbs, which is great. It's one of the rare plant-based proteins that is lower in carbs. Say nuts are primarily a high source of fat. Yes, they offer some protein, but nuts are not a complete protein. So nuts and seeds, for instance, will pair well with a plant-based shake like my Plant Power. It's pea protein. And pea protein by itself is a complete protein, meaning it has all the essential amino acids that you need. And yet, when we combine, say, pea protein, which has a lower essential amino acid profile than, say, an animal protein does, we combine the nuts and seeds with it, they are not as high and they're missing some of those essential amino acids. But when we combine the two of them, we have a much better essential amino acid profile. So it's so much better for you and for your muscles. And the recipes I share in the Ultimate Smoothie book, my Flipping 50 Ultimate Smoothie book, they're on purpose. I am not just choosing to top a smoothie bowl with nuts and seeds because it looks pretty. It's not random. It's on purpose so that you can attain and achieve the high essential amino acid profile that you need, especially if you are somebody who's choosing to do it with plant-based protein. Okay, so here's how we do it. If you too are a fitness pro or health coach or wanting to be, it's really important. This is how we operate at Flipping 50. We do not count. I won't go there with calories and points and grams of macros, except for this, for protein. So there is a formula for women to follow easily to look at a meal and say, okay, do I have the right number of carbs here? What's representing my carbs? Do I have the right servings of fat here? What's representing my fat? And do I have the right amount of protein at this meal? And if you follow it, you may be counting your hemp parts or your salmon as, okay, check, I've got my fat, and check, I've got my protein total. But you won't back yourself into a corner and have too little protein. The worst mistake that women who want to hold on to lean muscle can make. So I hope that helps a little bit. So it's really important that you realize, yes, your food is always double dipping. There are some that don't, but many foods have always been double dipping. So if you're covering the bases, all you need to know is look specifically at each food stuff, the macronutrients, and are they represented in the right amounts, say according to the Flipping 50 fitness specialist. So for more information and for how you would become a Flipping 50 fitness specialist, who knows the After 50 fitness formula for women, I'll link in the show notes. You've got great questions that go deeper than RDAs and My Plate ever did or will. And we've got to combat programs that are still suggesting if you're going to have wine, you just reduce your calories elsewhere during the day and ignore those programs, ignore what calories you consume due to your hormones. And you can do it all providing information, asking the right questions within your scope of practice. If you're not a registered dietitian or operating in California or Colorado, where those calling themselves nutritionists can say just about anything. So, for you who are health coaches, personal trainers, or who want to be, I'll link in the show notes to that option. So, there you have it. That is my response to 5 questions, 5 menopause fitness questions that came from you. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. And if you've got a question, I'd love to hear from you. In the show notes, I'll put the link to the Facebook Flipping 50 Insiders group, to the Instagram timeline, and to the show on iTunes, where you can get it right on your cell phone or any other place where you download your podcast. You'll find Flipping 50. Love to hear from you. And don't forget, if you are interested in getting support during this Heart Healthy Month as we record live, I'll put the link to fit you with all of the bonuses if you jump in really quickly. And what are you waiting for? Let's start. Flipping 50, the entire second half. Don't you dare say, what about 60? Because you're in that 50, girlfriend. Let's get started. Flipping 50 today.